the minimalism that Nomeansno did seems to have very little in common with Lamont Young or Philip Glass or Steve Reich. But had you listened to any of these ideas of strip it down?
Yeah, I mean, something like "Lonely," which was off of the last song, probably the least popular song on Small Parts. But yeah, that's a really good example of that. Rob had this set of lyrics, and it was originally this kind of rock riff that he sang along with. And I said to him, I said, well, can I just give it a shot? And the notion that you would play, there was virtually no drums on it, and that we could just play really simple single notes together and sing in a low register, and just that really appealed to me, and something where, like the Young Marble Giants, who I was probably inspired by on that particular song, had a way of making something that sounded so simple and basic sound so important and essential when you were listening to it. So again, I love the beginning of I Heard It Before by Black Flag, this sort of wall of paint peeling feedback. But on the other hand, I'm just as excited by the guy in Young Marble Giants, you know, going tick, 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 on his guitar. Great. And it says, and maybe even says more to me personally. I do kind of subscribe to the less is more. Sex Mad, called Love Thing, which I wrote. Again, what would be in the middle that would, I mean, I thought of people like John Cage. You know, I thought of people who you know, would do sort of put the art in music, the Wires of this world and the Residents. And the idea that you have a middle break where all on the offbeat, which was difficult to do for all of us, because at a certain point your brain starts putting it on the onbeat. And in the beginning, it would, you know, sometimes John would come in and it would be like, he'd flip it around and Rob, oh, how are we going to get out of this? But yeah, I actually, it's very similar to the solo in Two Lips, which is, again, a bit of a joke. But on the other hand, I wanted it to be beautiful sounding. It wasn't meant to be ha, 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 ha. I mean, it ended up being that live, and I'm really to blame for that. And we all sort of went along with it because people started getting sort of annoyed by the last note and the pause became longer and longer. After I left, I mean, entire songs were being inserted. There were, you know, within that solo, and then the solo would come back out. But it was more of a conceptual, sort of Dadaist kind of thing. And Love Thing, I thought I wanted it to make it so that at a certain point the listener goes, okay, that's enough, but it keeps on going. It's like it should be that you listen to them going, okay, they get in this groove now. And then it just goes, it's like, okay, now you can move on, but it just keeps on going. And that it takes your sort of your rock song and just sort of snaps it in two in the middle. So you're forced to rethink it when it comes back in again. And yeah, that type of thing is fun and easy to do. And like I said, I was absolutely thinking of people like Cage in doing things like that.
And were you actively seeking these weirder acts out, or did you?
No, not at all. They just came across my path, and when I heard them, I kind of thought, that's different. That stands out. I mean, it could have been Greg Ginn solos on Black Flag, or well, Andy Gill certainly. I've talked about him before. That he was. Yeah, for instance, in a song I did a little video about, he take two notes, like an A and a G on a G string, like, and going back and forth between the two, and holding some and not holding others, and not really making it a straight line, and that just blew my mind, because it wasn't at all what my brother heard, which was, you know, the Doobie Brothers and the Rolling Stones. This was something completely different for me in my whatever 17-year-old head in 1980. And so yeah, but those things just sort of came across my path. Fred Frith, through a number of bands. I don't know where I heard Fred Frith first. Probably the Art Bears, which are fantastic, and then stuff he did with the Residents, and Skeleton Crew, of course, really one of my favorites. And Chadbourne, again, sort of via. Soldiers, Corpses of a Foreign War was probably the first thing I heard of his, and then I heard Jockeybilly afterwards, Heaven and Vietnam. Again, it really made me think differently of what I could do on a guitar, and I didn't need to necessarily rely on the basic scales or what the mainstream was putting out as a good guitar solo. That said, there's plenty of people who play fantastic straight solos, R&B solos, rockabilly solos that I'm in total awe of. It's not me, but yeah.
With all due respect, I mean, there's a couple things you play where you go, this is the worst, best guitar playing I've ever heard. When putting it all in order ain't enough. Yeah, there's a part for like 7 seconds that is maybe the best, worst guitar playing ever.
Well, I can tell you where that inspiration came from was from the sort of my War era onwards of Greg Ginn, especially side 2.
Yeah.
War, and these long looping solos, and I could never. I did try sometimes to sort of figure out how he was doing what he was doing. To this day, I still don't know. I mean, I know Flag goes around and plays, and the guitar player does a remarkable job of sort of emulating Greg Ginn. But he would just choose these notes. I didn't understand. I mean, I had an easier time understanding Fred Frith or Chadbourne than I did Greg Ginn, because I don't think Greg Ginn was really sort of musically schooled. I just think he just had an odd part of his brain which would choose these particular notes, and that's absolutely what I was going for in that song, was a sort of cross for the main part, sort of like a Wire song, and then solo like a Greg Ginn later period Black Flag. So the main bit is like a Wire song. It's like and sort of dropping into that. And the actual solo, I can't even remember it. I haven't listened to that song.
That's okay.
But it was meant to be sort of something that was sort of careening and losing.
Yeah, falling apart.
And sort of stumbling down to its end. And but I like that song a lot, actually. I know it probably just isn't like a big fan favorite or anything like that, but there's lots in the song which I like about my own guitar playing, which isn't tons, but at a certain point, I think I'm going like this. And at the time, we had we met and toured with the X, and I was watching Terry X, their guitar player, sort of again attacking his guitar more like an object than an instrument, and I like that idea. Not for everything, but just every now and then, just kind of don't treat it like a series of notes. I still try to do that now. That I think is you can kind of get trapped in your routines. Some people, you do different tunings and stuff like that. It's just too much work for me. But your fingers at a certain point will begin to do the same patterns every time you pick up a guitar. The same scales. It's impossible to totally escape that. So my way around that was to kind of think, okay, well, what if I'm, bending a string a particular way, or instead of playing my thing here, what about, like this, and I'm using this part of my hands as opposed to my pick or my fingernails, and that was really kind of liberating. And I could have it all. I could sit there and play, if I wanted to, or go like that if I wanted to, and it didn't really matter.
Well, and speaking of the noisy parts too, when I went back and re-listened to the instrumental section of "I Think You Know," it sounds like it's bass and drums, but I realized no, there's all this almost exactly what you were just doing, pick scrapes and fingernails, and it sounds like sound effects, but it's
well, again, I have to give credit to Terry for that. Not that I really copied him, but there's a lot on 0+2 that is, well, even the song 0+2 = 1. Rob had this big booming bass line, which did not change. That's the bass line. There is no break. There is no chorus, end, middle. It's just one bass line all the way through. Fantastic song of his. And John just sort of riffed all around that. But we thought, no, let's not make it a two-piece. We'll add something. But I thought, wow, I can't get in here. And so I just took my E string and just went way down with it. So it was just this sort of wobbly thing. And as a result, I just spent the entire song finding ways to, pull it around this way, doing all kinds of things with it that I wouldn't normally do. And I think the result is really nice. And I think, and Ghosts as well. There's a lot in Ghosts, a lot of noise. And it's something that probably, Rob and John were into it, but I was really into it.